had a client once that sold high-end artificial Christmas trees. And when people got them, it's called fluffing. They fluffed the trees and they didn't look like the pictures. So they would call customer service and they would tell them how to do it. And they just created YouTube how to properly fluff your tree. And it reduced the calls and it increased their cross sells because they were able to sell them the accessories and the decorations.
I'm thinking, Danielle, because we're always looking for the soundbite that our team uses to promote these episodes. And, it's going to be something about how to, help your email program fluff its tree, isn't it?
I can only hope.
Welcome to Email After Hours by SenderScore, powered by Validity.
We're your hosts. My name is Guy Hansen.
And I'm Danielle Gallant, and this is Email After Hours.
Welcome back to Email After Hours. Today, we are going to talk about automation. So if you are looking to take your email game to the next level, or maybe you're wondering why your automated campaigns aren't driving the results you expected, then you are in for a treat.
That's right. Our guest today is Greg Zakowicz, a seasoned expert in B2B and D2C marketing with a particular passion for automation. Greg's work has helped countless brands streamline their processes and increase revenue by letting the robots do the heavy lifting. Whether it's increasing efficiency, driving more sales with less effort, he's seen it all. His insights are rooted in years of hands-on experience working with everyone from small businesses to right up to high-growth SaaS companies. Greg, we are thrilled to have you here today. Let's get this conversation started.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me. And robots are awesome, aren't they?
I was just in an airport and they had little robots walking around asking if I needed help and trying to serve me food. So I'm with you. I'm obviously not the robots we're talking about today. But before we get into automation, let's just start off with a bit of fun, as we usually do. Guy, I think it's fair to say that you're a benchmark report nerd. I'm a benchmark report nerd.
Geek.
And so I think all of us here, we're all good for, a good benchmark stat. So Greg, question for you. What's the best email marketing benchmark stat that you've seen so far this year?
So I've got to go back to back in stock automation, which few brands use them. So the send volume isn't quite as big, but I see more and more brands actually deploying them. The conversion rate on back to stock automation is astronomical. It is like, if my memory serves me correctly, and I'm old, from the benchmark report, I think the conversion rate is 5.83. I think I got that. It could be 5.38. Now, put that in comparative and into perspective. If you schedule a message to send on like a Tuesday or Thursday, your conversion rate is 0.07%. And I think maybe the next best automation, like cart abandonment, might be like 3%-ish, right? So it's almost double, right? It's astronomical how good those things convert. So that's the one that blows my mind, because I try to figure out ways, okay, what works well there, and how do I put that into other messages, scheduled automation, whatever, and try to use, you beg, borrow, and steal the stuff you can.
That's outstanding. Let's stay with benchmarks for a second, because actually when you reached out to us, when we first started talking about have you come and join us on Email After Hours, you actually brought us this really interesting stat, which was that in 2024, automations accounted for 37% of all email attributable sales, while only consuming 2% of send volume. So, these numbers build their own case. And it's almost the question is, why should every email program, be aiming to implement more automation, right?
Here's the interesting part. So I've been in email for 19 years, which is unbelievable to me. I'm coming up on 2 decades here pretty soon. And it's changed a lot. But the one thing, when I was doing consulting with clients, 12 years ago, the numbers were very similar. Like I always looked at them and said, okay, can I get you between 25 to 40% of your revenue coming from automated messages? Like we're in good shape here, right? And make your job easier. And fast forward 12 years and we're still there. We're at 37. Like those numbers aren't changing. And companies are wising up to this pretty well, but it still baffles me how you can go into this and be like, we're just going to schedule a few messages and we'll live in,
batch and
email will do his job. Yeah, it's unbelievable. And I'm like, let the robots work, right? Let them cook.
So in your experience, There are obvious automation emails, right? Like cart abandonment. But are there less considered automation opportunities that you're a huge fan of and you've seen really work?
Yeah, so there are. So there's like a key three I look at if you're not, if you're doing nothing else and you do nothing else. There are three I look at. The one I look at that is it's becoming more popular. And I use my wife as kind of like the barometer here because she'll forward me emails and she's like, "Oh, this is interesting." But I've gotten a few of them the last few months that are exactly on this. But I look at post purchase series. And what I mean when people hear post purchase, they think of like your transactionals, your order and shipping confirmations, your upsell, cross sells. Those are fine. They're good. You should probably be sending them. I'm looking at relationship building with those. So I'll give you a quick example of one she forwarded me. I was doing a presentation on post purchase like a month ago, and a couple days before, maybe about a week before, she sends me this email and she's like, "Hey," she didn't know I was giving the presentation. She's like, "This thing really caught my," it was a post purchase message, right? So it was makeup. She bought makeup, and the email came and it's like, "Hey, you've got the goods. Now here's how to use it." And it was a tutorial, linked to, I don't know if it was a TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube, but it was a tutorial how to properly put it on. These messages are gold, right? Because we live in an era now where loyalty is really, if you can even build and capture loyalty, one, that's a pretty good challenge, but it's hard. Customer retention, right? It's becoming more of a focus here. And these are messages that kind of build that stuff. So if you nothing else, a simple how-to message or product care message, things like that make you the first option. And then they have to back away from that. And I think that's really critical now. It's underutilized by a lot of brands. I start to see more and more brands wising up to it, but hugely powerful messages.
It almost goes without saying, or should go without saying, that having good data underpins the success of every email program. And I think that's even more true for automation. So let's talk about, the data strategy you need in place to underpin successful email automation. In your experience, what kind of customer data is absolutely crucial to drive an automation strategy? And where do you see companies falling short as they try to execute against that?
Yeah, this is kind of like a death by a thousand paper cuts question because there's probably a million a year. So I look at data very much like segmentation strategies, right? To do segmentate, it can be really simple and it can be really complex, and it's kind of whatever you want to make of it, right? So you want to do complex automation, you need a lot of data, but then you need the tools to create multiple versions of messages and do it consistently and things like that, right? So it can become complex, or it can be really simple. So for data, for really good automation from an email side, you don't really need a lot to do it well. And the more you have, then you can fine tune and optimize it. So let's look at so I'll just kind of tease the three essential automations I look at: welcome messages, product or browse abandonment messages, cart abandonment. Those are going to drive the majority of all automated email sales. Post purchases up there too. If you do nothing else, do those three. If you think about what you need from there, product abandonment, well, you need the email sign up and you need just data of them browsing the product, right? And that's it. Now, if you want to optimize it further, purchase date, like purchase data, which should be tied into your ecom platform anyways, so you should be covered there. And then maybe you can fine tune it with like average order value or whatever, but that's all you really need. So what you could do that for is, okay, I'm on your website, I'm checking out, I leave, which is most people on your website. I'm just an online window shopper. I get this email: "Hey, Greg, come back, check out, top rated eyeliners." So you want to guide the journey, you want to show me some social proof and value adds. But then you want to prove to me why I should shop with you. Don't forget, always free shipping over 35, hassle-free returns, satisfaction guarantees. Now, if I bought from you 12 times, you probably don't need to promote that stuff as much. You probably only need to send me one reminder versus 3 reminders, right? So small, simple pieces of data. You can kind of customize timing, number of messages, flows, incentives. I mean, if you know my average order value and you want to increase that, you can give me an incentive that has a minimum spend over that amount to try to get me over there, right? So simple pieces of data is all you really need to make a more effective series. And then welcome series, right? We obviously don't have purchases. Click-based behavior in the welcome message. What are they clicking on? And we can send them and guide them down a different journey that way. So from a simplistic, which easy executable perspective, like that's where you go. And then you can layer on that with as much data as you want. What did they recently buy? What are their affinities? What area do they live in? Right? Am I growing up in Buffalo or Miami? Different climates there. So you can get into the weeds if you want, but you don't need to.
I think you've already given us a load of great talking points there. I've got a specific question. We've seen a lot of debate about the merits of collecting both email addresses and phone number time at the same time. And, the pros, I guess, is that, you're effectively getting 2 data points for one. You can service 2 different channels from day one. I guess the con is that, you're potentially putting an extra obstacle into the sign-up process. You might create some more friction. What's your thoughts? And, when's the right time to ask for that phone number?
So if it's me, I ask for it all the time, right? So SMS it's ubiquitous. It's just how people chat. It's how they talk. No one makes phone calls anymore, right? So I now find the easiest way to get things done is to make the phone call because no one calls, right? And they pick up the phone. You get your solution in 2 minutes and you're good. But SMS it's ubiquitous. Everyone's doing it. It used to be a generational cohort conversation. It's no longer that. The biggest mistake I see brands make is, well, there's 2 of them. One, you make the SMS or the mobile number field required. Always leave it optional. It's got to be optional, right? It's not everyone's jam, or it's not their jam right then, right? They might opt into it later, but we need to give them the options there. And then we can talk about how to use it. So just because you're collecting it doesn't mean you need to use it immediately. All right. So if you're, we happened this with a brand that was kind of skeptical of it. And they're like, well, I'll add it to my opt-in form. And they added it. And I think within like 8 months, they had like 70,000 subscribers. And they're like, okay, our audience wants it. It's a major portion, but like this could be your testing ground. This could be, proof is in the pudding. If I put it on there, it's optional. No one opts into it. My audience isn't, my products, my audience, whatever it is, they're not into it. If they do opt into it, it's your sign.
If, in your opinion, if a subscriber or consumer believes that they are getting real value from a brand, do you think that influences the quality or quantity of data that they're willing to, of their own personal data that they're willing to provide to a brand?
I think so. We keep seeing these reports, and we've probably all read the same things, right? But we keep seeing these reports and surveys and studies that show consumers are willing to give a little more data as long as they get something in return for it. And I think that's always been the case. I think data is now just, it's 10x because we have phones on us. And we're just giving everything away on a website. I'm like, okay, here's all my info. I trust you'll send me something, right? So I think as long as of value in return, they're happy doing it. As long as you're not asking for social numbers or anything. But it used to be, 15 years ago with SMS, it was brands were still doing it. People were still opting into it. But there was also very much a conversation of it's only for young people and you've got to really give them something and it's very intimate and they're not going to. Now everyone's just throwing phone numbers around. They're like, yeah, sure, you get one. And social profiles become the new like gold, right? So again, can we make it more relevant, the better off you'll be for it. And I think people are fine with that as long as it doesn't push, social norms or something.
Agreed. And speaking of social profiles, that leads really nicely into our next question, moving on from data. And, I think it's probably well understood that, in an ideal world, email and SMS and social media work together as part of a unified, joined up omnichannel brand experience. But specifically from an automation point of view, is it possible to effectively automate across channels, or are marketers better off operating separately and each channel has its own sort of tailored and automated strategy in place?
So I think the more holistic you can be, the better off you'll be for it, right? You're going to learn different things. You'll learn what works in some places that don't work in the others. I think it's a lot easier to combine this stuff now for someone, and I think the other benefit here is, back in the day, someone used to be in charge of email because it was a full, like no one really knew that much about it. That's in loose terms, but you had an email team, then you had your search team. And if you're a D2C marketer now, you're probably doing social, you're doing email, you're doing paid search, and then you're doing 4 other jobs as well. So that same person, a lot of times, or the same couple people are all in these things together. So it makes sense to do so. Most email providers nowadays that sync up with the account platforms, they have some sort of social capability, segment retargeting in there. So just using OmniCenter as an example, right? We can take in the platform segments. You can sync over to Meta or Google search ads, right? Those things will update kind of real time on your segments. So where this comes in handy is if I'm on your website, I abandon something, like typical playbook is then to take you export the segment, you upload it on the, to Meta or Google search, you retarget me. But if we could sync these things now, okay, you send me the, fraction of a penny email, gets me to come back, I buy it from you. And now we can update that segment and say, okay, either here's a lookalike for retargeting, or don't retarget this person based on the email address, right? So you can kind of automate even these things to some degree to make them better, reduce your retargeting costs, which is the end of the, you maximize your ROI at that point. And then you have the same thing from your segments, right? You have these pre-built segments for, hey, at risk of churning or lapsed customers, and you can automatically retarget those out. So you can kind of keep people going. And I think that's the best way to do it if you can do so. But most email providers now, they make it really easy for you.
I hope for everybody, every marketer listening, that most of your email programs have a post-purchase flow that already exists. What should a typical post-purchased email include to truly engage customers? And should it just be one email?
What makes a good post-purchase series? So how I look at it, I will say I would think the majority of brands actually do not have a good post-purchase series, but I would say a lot of them don't even have a post-purchase series beyond your automated transactionals. You might have one or two not one or two, but you might have a small percentage that have like the automated cross-sell or upsell emails going. I think most brands don't actually have one, which to me is an opportunity, but I have been seeing more and more brands develop theirs a little bit just based on, anecdotal stuff from purchasing things. When I look at a post-purchase series, I think if you want a really robust one, I say really robust, but in my mind, where most brands are going to fall into, I think it's going to be 2-3 messages for that initial purchase. And beyond your sales ones, right? You can still have an upsell, cross-sell as like a fourth. I look at a very simplistic thank you going out either right away or maybe just the next day. Something simple. Thanks for your recent order. Nice branded lifestyle image in there. Hey, thanks for a recent order. Happy to have you as a customer. And make the call to action to something other than shop now. You could have suggested products in there, nice branded image, but that call to action could be customer service page or what happens next, or connect with us on social, something that is going to kind of benefit the customer. And this is what I think about post-purchase. This is how I summarize it. Does it help you or does it help the customer? And every message should help the customer, right? That is in this like nurture series. And it will come back to help the company, I promise you. So that's what I would do with a thank you message. And so we talked about my wife example. She bought something, let's say holly or something decorative for Christmas this year. And she got this post-purchase message and she forwarded it to me. Again, it was like a day later. It was like, hey, thank you for your purchase. Nice branded graphic, a couple product suggestions, and then some like how-tos at the bottom, kind of like a subtle value add. She looked at the main hero image. She's like, ooh, I kind of like that. And then she started clicking it. So if like even the lifestyle image is something other can pique that interest. My next message would be if your products align themselves, either a how-to product care message. So you can have, I use the examples of if you sell lingerie, right? Do you have how to properly wash and care for your lingerie? And do you sell a wash bag? Do you sell proper detergent, right? Those are subtle upsells or subtle cross-sells you can do in the message without making it the focus. If you sell couch covers, how to properly put your couch covers on. Or I had a client once that sold high-end artificial Christmas trees. And when people got them, it's called fluffing. They fluffed the trees and they didn't look like the pictures. And they didn't look like you're spending $2,000 on a Christmas tree. So they would call customer service and they would tell them how to do it. Eventually, they talked to customer service, like, hey, we're getting a lot of calls here. And they just created YouTube, how to properly fluff your tree. And it reduced the calls and it increased their cross-sells because they were able to sell then the accessories and the decorations. And they've got a limited window. So think about the things that help the customer with your products. It could be use cases. It could be, recipes. If you sell like a cooking blend, say top 3 recipes, I've gotten these before. And that's how I do. And then you can sprinkle in your dedicated sales email within that series where it makes sense. But that's how I look at it. 2 to 3 messages for a first time customer, thanking them, showing them how to do something, how to use the product better, how to care for it. And then, it could be customer service. And, if I just tell people, don't force content. If you've got 2 messages and that's great, awesome. If you've got 4, great. Most of this content probably exists on your website anyways. It's on a blog, it's on your social media pages. Maybe it was in a previous email. It's just a matter of refining it, putting it somewhere, and then using it in a message.
I'm thinking, Danielle, because we're always looking for the soundbite that our team uses to promote these episodes. And, it's going to be something about how to, help your email program fluff its tree, isn't it? You made some great serious points there as well, Greg. And I think, Danielle and I, we often sit in front of our customers and, the best piece of advice is walk a mile in your customer's shoes, and understand what it's like in their lives, and you won't go wrong. You're absolutely right. I think, listen, as we start to pull the strands of this excellent conversation together, can you tell us about a great automation success story that you've been involved with and what made it as good as it was?
That's a really good question. People ask me things like this all the time, and I never have like a go-to one here. So I'll point to a simplistic example because maybe it'll give people inspiration that don't have a lot of resources and don't have a lot of time to actually do something. So we have a customer now that COVID hit. A lot of brick and mortar sales didn't really have a robust online program. They didn't have an email program. They're like, okay, we've got these email addresses they were collecting, but they weren't doing anything with it. They're like, okay, we kind of have to pivot now. And I heard someone like me tell them that they should do a welcome, a browse abandonment, and a cart abandonment messages, kind of a staple. And they're like, all right. And they just went through and created a couple series, 1 or 2 messages. You start simple. They weren't the best looking messages in the world, but they were something, and they were automated. They were sending. And that brand's now doing about 25 to 30% of their email revenue on those 3 messages alone, right? So if you think about like one person doing an email program that is having to write the emails and code them and do all these things or just build them, that takes time. It just does. And if you automate these things, they start creating revenue for you. They start gathering data on the back end to optimize, but then you can always fine tune them. You don't have to have a perfect series. You do one message, you let it start sending, and you add a second message later, right? And then you add a third message later as time. You swap out the image, make it look better later, and that's a simplistic way to go. So I think it's a good example of someone with limited resources, limited time, just being like, okay, I'm going to dedicate this week to build one email and just automate it real quick. And the automations are so easy now. They take 10, 15 seconds to set up. It's just a matter of putting the content and sitting down for an hour and doing it. So I think it's a good example of being able to do something with limited resources and get some benefit from it.
Looking back at those stats that we initially kicked off this conversation with, do you think automation has hit a saturation point now, or is there more scope? Like, what do you think the next frontier might be when it comes to automation?
I don't think it's at a saturation point, but I think it's table stakes now. It used to be, I would say it was table stakes, 80 years ago, but in some degrees it wasn't. You could still get by, you could still thrive without it as long as you supplemented it now. You still need to supplement it with social media and paid, ads and your other forms of advertising. But I think it's table stakes. If you don't have at least your high intent ones, at those key stages, I think you're just leaving money on the table because other brands are doing it. Other brands have it. And deciding between 2 brands that one's targeting me with nice messages at the right time and the other one's just kind of they're going to send me a random message on a Wednesday that may or may not be relevant to me. I'm probably more glued into the brand that's treating me a little bit better. And so, what the next evolution is, I think it's just going to be maybe more predictive from a timing standpoint. So right now we're doing automations are behavior based. They're sending based on an action the user takes. Go to your website or maybe inaction, right? Lapsed purchaser or churn customer. I think as we start integrating AI a little more into these platforms, OmniSend included, those at risk or possible churn segments might get more hypersensitive. So, typically a customer churns for our brand at 21 days, but people like Greg churn in 18 days, right? So you might get those hyper nuances that we can then fine tune a little bit to make those messages either more relevant, more timely. Product recommendations, which are pretty good now to begin with, are going to be hyper sensitive, which makes messages better. So I think that's probably the next frontier, is just making them more relevant with, finer pieces of data. But to the original question, I just think it's table stakes now. You've got to have the key ones, and birthday messages are fine. They're only going to get you so far, right? So focus on the intent side.
Fully in agreement. We need to start wrapping up. So this week I get to throw the closing quickfire question at the guest. When we first met a couple of weeks ago, you described yourself as an aggressive marketer. And I know you meant that in a good way. So tell us, what's the most daring or bold marketing move you've ever pulled off? The one that your colleagues were looking at your time going, holy crap, what's he thinking?
So that's a really good question. So when I was consulting, there are some relationships you have that you could just throw off the wall ideas out there. And I've thrown a couple out and they're like, oh, that's good, I'm going to do it. It could be like a Sasquatch email that is like Tom Brand for me that actually performed well. I'll go back to my early days. So, back when to segment, which we used to segment, all the time, you were running MySQL queries through the IT department, right? To get those segments. So I was running a continuing education, CLEs, continuing legal education for lawyers, these webinars. We're trying to find topics that will resonate across the board. So contracts are always big, always good topics, but contracts are big, right? There's tons of different. I'm looking at these things and I'm going, all right, well, my mentor at the time was telling me, hey, always ask questions, dig deeper. Well, why does something matter? It's like history. Something happened. Well, why did it happen? Well, why did that happen that led to that? And you start getting back there. So I go, okay, well, contracts are big. Why are they big? Well, they help protect people. Why do they help protect people? Because if this happens, they can lose money. Well, why does the lawyer care about that? Well, the more they can protect him, the more they'll sell, right? We start following those trails down. I go, okay, what is the most important clause in a contract then? And I'm looking, okay, it could be real estate contract, could be mergers and acquisitions. There's always an indemnification clause in there. So I'm like, all right, we'll do a webinar just on this one stupid clause in a contract. And they're like, Greg, no one's going to do that. Like, it's too niche. And I'm like, no, it'll work. This is the thing, right? And so we did, we market these things for like 4 weeks, right? And they had a 4-week run. I think by the end of the first week, it was the most successful conference the company has ever had. Right. And this thing became an evergreen. It became an evergreen topic. We would run it every 2 months. And then we started doing like indemnification clauses for IP contracts, indemnification clauses for real estate contracts. Right. And then we started doing clauses, all sorts of different clauses. Most of them failed, but that was the one clause that we hit. And like I had to fight for it. And then it just turned into like a cash cow for the company. So that's the one I'll stick with. Long answer, but
there you go. Well, Greg, thank you so much for sharing all of your valuable insights and expertise with us today. For listeners that are interested in connecting with you and learning more about your work, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, LinkedIn's always good, I think, for most people here. So Google, if you misspell it, it'll fix it. There's not a lot of me around. I'm also growing my Blue Sky profile if you want to just quick hits. So I kind of navigated off Twitter a little bit, but LinkedIn's usually the best. So feel free to reach out. And if you're curious about OmniChannel, like we're all open people, we're friendly. So just reach out to any one of us and we'll guide you along. So,
and if you want
thank you both. This was awesome.
If you want to attend a webinar about indemnification clauses, you know exactly what to search.
I should have been a lawyer. I know everything about them now.
For everyone listening, be sure to tune in next time and hit subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And of course, don't forget to visit senderscore.org for more resources to help you become a stronger sender.
And just to say, Danielle and I, we're always super proud of our great guests that join us on Email After Hours. We're always looking for great future guests too. So if you want to join us for a future episode, drop a comment, ping us on LinkedIn, fill out the guest form that's linked to the show notes. And in the same kind of vein, if you'd like to send in your email marketing hot takes, any questions, queries, you can also email us. That's at emailafterhoursyt@gmail.com. The YT for YouTube. Emailafterhoursyt@gmail.com. or head to the link in the show notes and send us an audio message so we can literally hear from you. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you all again in 2 weeks' time. Bye for now. Be sure to tune in next time and hit subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And don't forget to visit senderscore.com for loads more great resources to help you become a stronger sender.
To all you sleepless senders out there, thank you for joining us after hours, and see you next time.